Well, you hear the music. That means another week has passed. It has flown by. Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. I am Johnny Soap, your host. Standing with me is Robert Munich. Before I throw to Robert here, wanted to say thank you to everyone who's taken the time to download, follow the podcast, retweet the podcast. Don't forget, though, while you're doing all that awesome stuff, leave us a 5-star rating on those platforms, whatever it is, your Apple, your Spotify, etc. Leave us that rating and help us grow the show. Robert, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, and yes, I will echo what you just said. Thank you so much to the people who have downloaded our podcast. We greatly appreciate all the support. I will admit the numbers are like very good. I'm pleasantly surprised. I think
Yeah, it's good.
to start the podcast, I thought the audience was going to be maybe a little bit smaller, and then maybe you and I would sort of build it into something bigger. But we've put up some pretty good numbers so far in terms of downloads and everything. So yeah, just want to say thank you very much to everyone who's listened and downloaded so far. It's been a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to continue it going.
Yeah, it's awesome. We have some great people who follow the show religiously and people who have come from my background of my old show, You're Writing on Flames Nation. They're all finding a nice little home in the podcast. Definitely going better than I expected as well. So it's great to see. Let's not leave them waiting any longer here, Robert, because there's lots to get into on the show today. I want to throw it over to you. Let's take a look back on the week that was, your thoughts, your opinions here, and what we saw this past week. Kind of a tougher homestand, I would kind of overall summarize it. What do you make of what we just saw from the Flames?
Yeah, it was a bit of a tough homestand. So last week they're coming off 3 games in a row: Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So on Tuesday it was a 4-3 win in the shootout against the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was a bit of a slow start, but the Flames really picked it up late. Nazem Kadri scored the game tying goal. Game went to a shootout, and of course Justin Kirkland, of all people, scored the shootout winner, which was so much fun. Just such a great story, and I love how that happened. And you know, little did people know, Justin Kirkland has like over a 60% success rate in the shootout in the American Hockey League. I don't think really like any Flames fans, quite knew like how good he is in the shootout. So I'm sure like when he came out onto the ice, I'm sure like myself, half of like Flames Nation was like, what the hell are you doing, Ryan Huska? You're putting Justin Kirkland in there? Like, oh my God.
Huska
knew, did he ever? So it was a great call by him. And it worked out better than the Nick Ritchie one a couple years ago. That's for sure.
Slightly.
I didn't want to bring that one up. That's a bad memory for Flames fans. But
someone just threw their phone across the room.
Yeah, exactly. But it was that was a fun game. It wasn't the greatest performance by the Flames, but Dustin Wolf was really good in that one. And then on Thursday, you had a 4-2 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes, they dominated the Flames for about 40 minutes of that game. But once again, the Flames put in a good effort kind of in the second half, third period, but they just couldn't quite come back, and they dropped the game 4-2. That one, I thought goaltending was very good again. I thought Dan Vladar was solid. He kept the Flames in that game because, like I said, the Carolina Hurricanes absolutely took it to the Flames. That looked like a playoff team against a non-playoff team. It was a beatdown for the most part. So that was pretty tough to watch for Flames fans. But the Flames they fought back and they played hard, and they put in a good effort, which is pretty much all you can ask for during a rebuild in times like these. And then finally, we had Saturday a 5-3 loss to the undefeated Winnipeg Jets, which I think is very surprising because I know coming into the year, you and I were both pretty skeptical of the Jets. Yeah. And yeah, just ho-hum, they're 8-0, whatever.
Making me look foolish, that's for sure.
Definitely. And once again, another slow start for the Flames. But, they ended up scoring a couple sort of Johnny Gaudreau style sharp angle goals. Dustin Wolf, man, I felt bad for Dustin Wolf in that game because the Winnipeg scored 2 goals on just terrible bounces. I kind of felt bad for the kid because he worked hard and he played well.
Yeah, the Flames scored 2 just atrocious goals because Comrie was terrible. And then the Jets get 2 atrocious goals because Wolf was so good that they just got these bounces out of nowhere. And you're just like, that's just so unfair for Dustin Wolf. And Comrie got what he deserved, except he didn't get what he deserved because he won the hockey game at the end of the night. So it was really weird. A really weird game on Saturday with the right team may have won the game, but the wrong goaltender won the game, if that makes any sense. Just shows that good to be lucky, lucky to be good, that old little saying there. For me last week as well, like I found that Jets game and the Carolina game to be very similar in the layout of the game. As the Flames started okay, but then they went to sleep for a period of time, and the other team took it to them, and they just had they didn't have enough of a bounce back to win those games or push those games to get extra points, and they just fell flat on themselves a little bit here. As they didn't just go to sleep a little bit longer, and these good teams make you pay. We saw them get away with it the week before against a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins. You can't do that against these good teams. The Jets, the Canes, they make the Flames pay, and not for the lack of a good time with the goaltenders, though. They were both fantastic.
Yeah, and like I had mentioned that I felt bad for Dustin Wolf, and it's mainly just like for his numbers, because if those two Winnipeg goals don't go in, like Dustin Wolf's save percentage, I believe it'd be in like the 930s, 940s. His goals against average would probably be around 2.
Yep.
So, if you look at his numbers right now, like they're good, but like they could be even better if you were to take away those 2 crappy Jets goals.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt bad for Wolf there, but he's been outstanding. And like you said, the Flames, I don't know what it is. So, when you talk hockey and you talk about teams starting slow, I guess I'd ask you, what do you think are the reasons behind that? Because there's a lot of people that say it's up to the coaches, but then there's a lot of people who say no, it's the players' responsibility. I guess, why do you think these slow starts are happening? And is there anyone to blame right now, would you say?
Blame is a harsh word, but I think it's a shared blame. If you have to put a word to it, you got to have your coaches have to have that game plan in place. They have to make sure that it's a clear message to these players. And then it's on the players to go out there and make sure that they're motivated to use that game plan and to be engaged enough and get themselves into these hockey games. I think Huska does a really good job over the course of a game realizing who's going, and we see that in the third period. It's harder to realize who's going and who's not going in the first period, but it's on both of them. You got to make sure your preparation is there and is key, and you're ready to go. It's like anyone who goes to work, right? You have to have a boss who's going to be motivating you to get the job done, but then you also have to make sure that you're in the mind space to get that job done. So it's a shared blame for me. And if one person isn't ready to go, one person's not engaged, it can really throw off a lot of things in your game plan. So you have to make sure that you're ready to go from the drop of a puck. You go watch these good teams with these good coaches, and you'll see it. You'll see they're engaged from the first play of the game. I think that's why you see a lot of these coaches use their third and fourth lines, your quote unquote energy lines, to start these hockey games. Get people engaged in these games, get your players up and ready to go as soon as you possibly can. So for me, Robert, it's a shared blame. How about you?
Yeah, I usually in these situations, I kind of put it more on the players, because they're the ones that are on the ice. They're the ones that have to go out and execute game plans.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time believing that Ryan Huska and his staff don't have the Flames prepared to play hockey, just based off of what you saw in those behind the scenes looks in the Flames documentary there, The Chase, and what you see in press conferences. Like, you can tell if there's one thing that Ryan Huska is very good at, it's preparation and details. Mm-hmm. So my belief would be that Huska has the Flames prepared. He has them ready to go with a game plan. And then pretty much it's up to the players themselves to go out and execute. And so I guess I don't know if I want to say I put more of the blame on them, but I would say more of the responsibility of a good start is definitely on the players. And it's something that I think that they definitely need to work on, because the NHL, there's so much parity. Every team is so good. If you fall behind in this league against anybody, it's so difficult to come back in today's NHL. And especially against teams like the Carolina Hurricanes and Winnipeg Jets. Like, it's nearly impossible to do that. So, and the Flames, they have a tough stretch of games coming up here.
Yep.
They're in Vegas tonight. You can't fall behind against them in that building. Especially, Vegas, they're the highest scoring team in the NHL right now.
Yep.
And then you got Utah, and that crowd has been going pretty wild. So you have the momentum there. And then you got New Jersey. Like, this team cannot fall behind. So I think it's something that they really need to focus on. And I mean, who knows? Maybe they're falling behind these games just because they're just not that good of a team. But I don't really believe that. I think that they're a decent NHL team, and I don't think they should be falling behind like this. But
a couple of things here before we move on to the next topic here is doesn't doesn't matter your talent level, your compete level can always be controlled by the players. And so even if you're not the most talented team, you're being able to be starting these games and be engaged in these games. You can control that by your effort and your willingness to get into the dirty areas and do the job. Whether you can score the goals, that's an entirely different story and conversation, but you can control your compete level every single game. And it's not just the start of these games I'm noticing for the Flames. Both the games against the Jets and the Canes, the start to that second period, if you go back and you watch those first 5 minutes of both those games in the second period, that is some of the worst starting of a period I've ever seen from a hockey team. They are not ready to come out of the gate starting the second period. It cost them the game against the Hurricanes, and it cost them the game against the Jets, in my opinion, because they weren't ready to start a period as well. So it's not just start of the game. Robert, is this lack of consistency that we're seeing from the Flames, because it looks like a completely different team last week than we saw about 10 days before, is this lack of consistency for you concerning?
Not really. I would say the one aspect of the Flames game right now that is concerning when you compare like the first 4 games to the last 4 games is special teams. So if you look in the first 4 games, the Flames are 4-0-0. Their power play was 28.6%, which was ninth in the NHL during that time. In the last 4 games, when they've gone 1-2-1, their power play is 7.7%, which is 29th in the NHL. And then when it comes to the penalty kill, it's actually been like surprisingly bad this year, because when you go back and look from the 21-22 season to the 23-24 season, so there's 3 years in there.
Yep.
When you combine all that, the Flames had the 4th best penalty kill in the NHL. And a lot of that was kind of the master, or like the brainchild or the mastermind was Ryan Huska behind it, who's obviously still in the organization. This year so far, their penalty kills at 71.4%, which is 28th in the league. So, going from 4th to 28th, that's really tough. And then this team, I don't think they really have the talent or the high-end talent to score a lot of goals at 5-on-5. So I think they really need to be good on the power play, on the man advantage.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It has not looked good the last 4 games. For me, it's the passing, it's the playmaking. Like, passes are off, passes are not hitting the tape. It looks like guys are putting pucks to where they think the player should be on the breakout, but they're not there. It's a lot of that type of execution that I'm not seeing from the Flames power play right now. And that's, if they want to be in the mix for a wild card this season, the power play has to be at least in the top half, at least bare minimum.
Yeah, and it started so well for them on both special teams. It really has. You laid out the numbers there, and it's incredible how it's fallen. The consistency on the special teams is what concerns me, not the consistency overall. It's the special teams inconsistencies that we've seen. You noted there, they're just not crisp enough on their passing. They're not crisp enough on their breakouts. And when you lose a draw, when you have a power play and you have to go down and chase it, you're just killing seconds off your own power play. So you got to start doing these little things. It's the details in the games on special teams for me. The Flames just don't look sharp, and that's going to cost them hockey games. It definitely cost them this past week for sure. There is one guy in conversation that does both sides of special teams. He's more of a power play guy. He's been in and out of power play one now with the return of Sharon Govich, but we have to give credit and talk about one Connor Zary. This guy for me has been, and you tweeted out just not long ago here how Rasmus Andersson is the best Flame on the season. And I was going to come in here and try to say that Connor Zary was the best Flame overall this season for the Calgary Flames so far. This guy clearly has the trust of the coach. He's been put out in all situations. He's been playing with Backlund and Coleman. That does help the game, but you have to also be a smart player to play with those two guys. He's taken on bigger roles each and every game that goes out there. His time on ice from last season to this season is up almost 3 minutes. That's quite the jump for a hockey player from season to season. 3 minutes is a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot to us in the real world, but in terms of hockey, that's 6 to 7 more shifts each game that this guy is getting on the ice and spending more time on the ice. His power play time has tripled. Like, if you can believe that number. This guy has done everything asked of Ryan Huska. And so I was going to come in here and try to convince you that this was the best Calgary Flame on the roster. He's not, because it's Rasmus Andersson. I'll concede that fact, because I know you have all those numbers on Twitter and they're outstanding. But your thoughts, your feelings on what you've seen from Connor Zary and how I'm going to call him the second best Flame we've seen this year.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's hard to argue that. I would say he's definitely been up there in terms of the best forward. I mean, who else could really be in that conversation to start this season? Like I would probably say it's Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman. It's probably been that whole line.
The whole line, yeah.
They've probably been the best, most consistent group on the whole team this year. But I'm totally with you on Zary, man. Like it's both the numbers and the eye test. Like just when you watch Connor Zary this season, it looks like he's like an entirely different player. Like the puck just seems to follow him around. Like I always noticed that with Johnny Gaudreau back in the day. It just felt like the puck was always on a stick, or it would always go in Gaudreau's vicinity. And I'm seeing that sort of same type of thing right now with Connor Zary in his game. He's just getting so many scoring chances, grade A scoring chances too. Like we're not just talking like shots from the outside. Like he's getting lots of shots, lots of opportunities from the inner slot, around the front of the net, which you love to see. In terms of the numbers, he's got 7 points in 8 games, which is like a 70-point pace. He's third on the team in shots, third on the team in shots taken, second in scoring chances, second in high danger chances. The only guy that's ahead of him is Nazem Kadri, and that's because he shoots the puck every time he can. But Zary, he's got the element of he takes shots and he takes his opportunities, but he's also a really good playmaker at the same time. Man, it's so impressive, the start that he's had to this year. And I will say, like, one of the reasons I'm not quite maybe ready to say that he is like the best forward on the team right now is because I do believe Blake Coleman and Michael Backlund have been a huge reason why he's had so much success to start this season.
Mm-hmm.
I just think those two players, they're so smart, they're so responsible, but they're also they're underrated, like kind of low key, like two of the better offensive players on the team so far. And like I've been seeing on Twitter lately, there's some people who are saying, Connor Zary, he needs to play with better players. Like he needs to play with more skilled players. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, the only place in the lineup he's probably going to go would be maybe down the middle with Anthony Mantha and Jonathan Huberdeau. But like if you look at like the last 4 games here, so Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman, they're second and fourth in high danger chances created on the Flames. Huberdeau is 7th, Mantha is 12th. So like what that tells me is like when at 5-on-5, when Huberdeau and Mantha are on the ice, nothing's happening. They're not creating any chances. They're not really doing anything in the offensive zone. Whereas Backlund and Coleman, they're spending like all their shifts down there. So,
and they start at defensive zone too half the time,
which is like the most impressive part. So it's like if you want Connor Zary to play with quote unquote better players, Mantha and Huberdeau are not it. Backlund and Coleman are better NHL players, like considerably better NHL players than Huberdeau and Mantha are right now. So I like the spot Zary's in right now. I'm curious if you sort of see it the same way. Like, do you think they should move him to the middle? What have you thought about his deployment so far?
Well, let's have that conversation. I think his deployment's been excellent. I think, like I've mentioned, he's got the trust of the coach, and so he's put in these specific situations because that's where Ryan Huska needs him to be and to play harder. I love him with Backlund and Coleman, so I'll start with that. And I love what that line is doing, and you're absolutely spot on. Backlund and Coleman do not get enough credit for what they do offensively for this team, because you just think of them as these defensive stalwarts who just are back there, reliable, shut down the other team's top lines, and that's their job. And while it is, they can do all of that plus have success offensively. You don't get 30 goals if you're Blake Coleman just because you're in the right spot at the right time for 32 times in a season. He was in that spot because that's his game, and that's how he plays. And same with Michael Backlund. And so Connor Zary being with those two guys has been a perfect fit. But I also talked about Ryan Huska putting Connor Zary and trusting Connor Zary. I wonder if now is the time, though, to put a little bit more on Zary's plate. And not because other people suck or aren't as good at the job. It's because he's earned more. And I wonder if you do put him with a Huberdeau and Mantha because he's the kind of player that can maybe get those other two players going. Because let's be honest, we'll talk about them, Huberdeau and Mantha, later in the podcast here, but they haven't been that good, especially the last week, 10 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if Connor Zary up the middle is something that you try just to see what you have for one thing. Can he handle more responsibility? Can he be a guy to get Mantha going or a Huberdeau going? Is he the kind of guy that can help drive a line? This team this year should be trying these type of things because they're not a Stanley Cup contender. Let's not fool ourselves here. Because they're just trying to rebuild here. They're trying to build up a team. They're trying to build a foundation here. You have to figure out what you have in Connor Zary. And I'm not saying Pospisil has been a bad center, but maybe Connor's already there. Try him out, see what he brings to the table, see what you can get out of him, and maybe that allows Pospisil to move to the wing and get a little bit of confidence going in his game, and maybe get back to playing his game a little bit more. And we'll talk about Pospisil in just a second here, but I really like the idea of putting Zary at center, seeing if you can get other guys going and see if he can handle the responsibilities. I firmly get that he's playing tremendous hockey with Backlund and Coleman, but maybe now's the time to see if you can get a little bit more out of him and maybe see if you can drive a line. Your thoughts on Connor Zary playing center here?
I do agree. Long term, they have to try Zary at center at some point this season. I'm a little skeptical if now is the right time. I almost think just keeping him with Backlund and Coleman for, the next maybe 20, 30 games makes sense just for his development.
Mm-hmm.
Like who better on this Flames team to learn how to play 200-foot game than Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman, and to do it on the wing with them, to do line rushes and practice with them, to sit on the bench with them and learn from them. I think that could be invaluable for Connor Zary. So I'm almost thinking now is not the time to move him to center. But eventually this season, it's going to happen because you have to figure out if he can do it or not. So I guess my opinion on it is, let's be patient. Let's let him continue to learn from Backlund and Coleman. That line is also their best line at 5-on-5 right now. And where does Connor Zary play best on the ice right now? It's in the offensive zone with his skill and creativity. Who spends the most time in the offensive zone and creates the most chances? It's Backlund and Coleman in that line. So maybe keep them together for a while, but at some point there's going to be injuries. At some point there's going to be trades, and there's going to be opportunities for Zary to play down the middle, probably in the second half of the season. And I think that's when I would move him there. Cause I just, it's interesting when I first saw Huska in training camp put Zary with Backlund and Coleman, I was thinking, that's ridiculous. Why would you put him on the defensive line? Why wouldn't you put him at center? Like I was kind of pissed about it, but man, Huska was right. I mean, this trio has been fantastic. So I think I would keep Zary there for now.
Yeah, and I don't mind that thinking either, right? So I don't think there's a wrong answer to this conversation. I just love different people thinking it different ways and how it can go about it. I think this conversation naturally dovetails into, okay, well, if Connor Zary is going to stay on the wing with Backlund and Coleman, have we seen enough to keep Pospisil at center then with Huberdeau and Mantha? Or is it time to look there for a bit of a change here? Because for me, Pospisil's been okay. He's been okay as a centerman. He's been okay with Mantha and Huberdeau from what he can get out of those guys. And okay is okay to start a season, but when does okay stop becoming enough? What are your thoughts with Pospisil at center? And is it time to maybe try something else? Do you leave Kirkland with those two guys? Do you say Sharon Govich moves down with those two guys? Your thoughts at Pospisil center? Is this enough time to make a judgment call, or is the sample too small?
Yeah, I'd start my answer by saying the sample size is too small. He's only played 7 games down the middle because he played a full game on the wing with Kadri and Kuzmenko already this year. So he's only played 7 games there. And that is just not enough time to like fully evaluate whether or not this guy can be a long-term center. So I would definitely say keep him down the middle for sure. But I'm with you. It's been very hit and miss. There's been a couple like incredible games. Like I go back to the opening night in Vancouver. He was incredible. The first Battle of Alberta, it was the 3rd game of the season. Pospisil was arguably the best forward on the Flames. So he's shown in spurts that he can be a really good center, but it's been very inconsistent. The one thing I'm just kind of skeptical of when it comes to Pospisil, it's like when you think about Martin Pospisil, what's he best at? And that's forecheck, physicality, pissing people off, getting under the skin, taking pucks hard to the net, using his speed. And I think the wing is probably the best place for him to capitalize on what he's good at. Because as a center, I mean, you're down low in the defensive zone. You have a lot more responsibilities. You're not necessarily going to be F1 on the forecheck a lot because you are down low helping out on defense. So you're not going to be that guy every single shift who's going to be first in on the forecheck, causing havoc. You got to be responsible in the offensive zone as well. Like, I just don't think that necessarily suits his game. I mean, I'd say give him, like, kind of with Zary on the wing, I'd say, like, keep him there for like another like 20, 30 games and just let him kind of figure it out on his own a little bit. But by then, if he still can't quite put it together on a consistent basis, I would be seriously considering putting him back on the wing, because I think that's where he does most of his damage. Do you kind of see it the same way, or what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think Pospisil long term is a winger, and that's not taking away from him in his game, because he is out there trying and playing. I think he's got, this is going to sound really harsh to the other two guys, but I think he's got kind of a raw deal with the two guys he has to play with right now. I wonder how he would be if he was given more of a Coleman style guy to play with. I do wonder what he would look like on the wing with Backlund and Coleman if you were to switch him and Connor Zary together down the road, see how that would go. But I'm with you here. You need to see him learn this game and take steps if you're going to keep him at center for sure. And that's one thing I haven't seen from Pospisil at center is steps yet. He's been okay, but now it's time to take that next step in the progression of being a centerman. Yes, only 7 games at center. I'm fully aware of that, but now we're getting close to double digits here with games played. We're getting close to double digits here with him at center. We have a lot of things. So it's time to start showing some steps here and seeing if you can actually play the game where it needs to be. Now, he does need his wingers to be a little bit better as well. If Mantha and Huberdeau wanted, maybe take a spin at having a good shift once in a while, that would be great. Help this guy out here, because he can't just carry 2 guys that are dead weight for a full season and be an effective center. I don't think anyone can. Let's be honest. Maybe Patrice Bergeron could, but that's about it. You need him to progress at center, and keeping him there, I think I'm with you on this. It's too small of a sample. Keeping him there a little bit longer, seeing if he can progress in the role and help himself out here and show that he can be that type of player. I do like him better on the wing long term, though, because just what you laid out there, right? First on the forecheck, he can be a bit of a S disturber. He can be the rat that people hate him for and can play his game. You're just not seeing all that confidence right now from him, but that's something that will come along if he gets more experience at the position here. Let's jump. We're going to talk about Coronato. Let's save that for a second here. Let's jump to Huberdeau and Mantha then real quick here, and let's talk about his wingers, what we aren't seeing or what we are seeing. Because for me, I look at both of these guys and what they're playing for the Flames right now, and I'd use the Office Space line on both the guys. What would you say you do here? And they started out really good in those first couple of games. Both these guys had a really good start to the season. We saw the full roller coaster ride of Mantha. We saw Huberdeau back there doing some points. But now we're seeing the Huberdeau of last year again, where he's just trying to do too much and force too much. Where do the Flames go here with both of these guys on this line? Do you just stick with it? You be the coach for a minute here, Robert. What are you doing with Huberdeau and Mantha here?
I honestly, I don't know.
Because firing him to the sun is not an option. You can't do that.
That was going to be my first thing I was going to say, but I guess we can't do that. You know what? Like, you pointed it out. Like, in the first 4 games, those 2 guys were really good, and they were really engaged, and like they were in the fight. They were being physical. They were making plays. They were forechecking hard. Like, it looked really, really good. And then these last 4. Like, quite honestly, I think they've been probably the 2 worst forwards on the team, at least when you consider the top 9. Like, I think they've just been awful. You look at Huberdeau, 6 points in his first 4 games, like, awesome production, but then he's got 1 point in his last 4. It looks like he's kind of back to he's turning the puck over a lot. He's trying to do too much. He's trying to make fancy plays, like, spinning backhand passes, no look between the legs passes. And it always ends up in a turnover, and it drives Flames fans crazy when he does that stuff. And I'm just seeing, like, he's not getting into the dirty areas as much. Like, he's not around the front of the net as much as he was. It's really disappointing to see that, because there was so much hope in those first 4 games. Yep. Now he's completely back down to earth here. I mean, we'll see if he can get back out of it, but I mean, he's still on pace for like 72 points this year because of that hot start, but gosh, the last 4 games have just been brutal. And then when it comes to Anthony Mantha, like, he's been dreadful. It's almost like the opposition needs to run a Calgary Flame into the boards in order to get Mantha engaged, because in game 1 against Vancouver, when Miller crushed Rooney there and Mantha was heated and he was emotionally invested, that guy was an animal. He was an animal out there. It was crazy how good he was. I'm like, if Anthony Mantha could bring that level of intensity to, 60 of the games, it's not realistic to think you can do it every night, but like 50 or 60 of the games, he would literally be like a 30-goal scorer, 60-point guy who is a physically dominant player. But I'd say probably 2 nights this year he's been really good, and that was Vancouver and Edmonton. Outside of that, he's been completely invisible. And like, just to illustrate it, in the last 4 games, Jonathan Huberdeau, he's only created 3 high danger chances. Anthony Mantha's created 1. Nazem Kadri alone has 11. And like, in the last 4 games, Anthony Mantha has 1 shot on net. 1 shot on net for Anthony Mantha in the last 4 games. This is a guy who the Calgary Flames were saying, oh, we want him having like 300 shot attempts this season and, in the 200s and shots on goal. He's had 1 in his last 4 games. Huberdeau has 5 in the last 4. Kadri has 18. Like, I'm just illustrating that just to point that, like, what other guys on this team are doing in the offensive zone, which a guy like Kadri and Backlund, Coleman, Zary is a lot. Mantha and Huberdeau are doing nothing right now. So it's disappointing, and hopefully they can somehow regain the form from the first 4 games of the year. But it's honestly, it's really frustrating watching these 2 guys, especially Mantha right now.
It's funny that you go through those numbers and you say that, because on Twitter right now, if you just go through and read it, you would think that Kevin Rooney is the worst thing to ever happen to the Calgary Flames. On my timeline, it's all about this. Yeah, Rooney sucks. Why is Rooney here? Put Rooney on waivers. Y'all watch Anthony Mantha and Jonathan Huberdeau play hockey in the last week, because clearly what they're bringing to the lineup is not good enough for what they're supposed to be. Whereas Kevin Rooney brings you something to the lineup, and you can see it with the way that he penalty kills, the way he plays center, the way that he drives a 4th line. Anthony Mantha, to me, is the most frustrating hockey player I've seen on the Calgary Flames in quite some time. You saw the skill in Vancouver. You saw the bite in Vancouver. You saw the skill again in Edmonton and the way he played against the Oilers. And then you see the roller coaster where he just disappeared. 1 shot attempt in 4 games. Are you kidding me? This is a guy who was brought in to shoot and to score goals. And you have 1 shot. And you're creating nothing. One attempt in the last 4 games. High danger.
Brutal.
Those are numbers that you would expect a rookie to have who plays on the 4th line, who's just learning how to play in the National Hockey League. You could give him a pass on those type of numbers. When you're a veteran that a team has brought in for either their cup run or to help another team if you trade him down the line to up his value, and you're getting that from the guy, that's press box for me. I'm sorry. And that's just not good enough. And it's not good enough. And you drag your line mates down if you're going to have that type of production. And so Pospisil might not be the best center on the Calgary Flames right now, but he certainly is not getting any help. And the way Huberdeau and Mantha are playing, this next conversation is fully warranted, because the Flames sent down a guy to the American Hockey League this past weekend so he could get games, so he could play minutes. But this guy probably brings more to the lineup than either Huberdeau or Mantha is bringing right now. Let's have that conversation with you and I, Robert, about Matthew Coronato. Is the AHL, the quote-unquote demotion, is that the right move for Matthew Coronato? Does he deserve to be in the lineup over Anthony Mantha, Kevin Rooney, whoever else you want to throw in the conversation? What do you make of Coronato going to the AHL?
It's tough, because based off of production on the ice and merit, I do think he deserves to be in the NHL. But at the same time, he's a 21-year-old player. He's being a regular healthy scratch, and when he does get in the lineup, he's playing 10 to 12 minutes a night in the NHL. Mm-hmm. That's not conducive for development for a 21, soon to be 22-year-old. So I'm more than okay with Coronato going down to the AHL for a little bit here. Let him go down there, play top 6 minutes, play on the first power play unit, maybe even get some PK time, just get a little stronger, continue to work on his skating. I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. yes, it's frustrating watching Anthony Mantha get ice time over a guy like Coronato, but the Flames are rebuilding. This is not a great team. It's okay if one of your young players isn't on the roster for the whole season this year, because next year I can almost guarantee there is a roster spot for Matt Coronato. His name will be written in pen on that roster next season.
I agree.
Let him go into next season being fully prepared, 100%, developing, like I said, getting stronger. Because you look at Coronato's numbers and they're good. Like, he's like leading the Flames in a lot of underlying numbers, like expected goals and high dangers and stuff like that, which is awesome. But at the same time, when you watch him, you can tell he's like half a step behind NHL's pace right now, and you can tell he's getting beat out in board battles. He's losing battles. I mean, he's a small guy, and he's getting out muscled and out strength by NHL defensemen right now. Those are the things I think he needs to work on before he comes back full time. So I'm not outraged by it. There's a lot of outrage on social media right now,
so much
about it, including his agency, who I believe one of the agents in Matt Coronato's agency there that he chose. He'd retweeted a couple Flames fans' stats that they had thrown out there about how Coronato's so much better than Mantha is right now, which is true. But at the same time, to be patient. He's 21 years old. There's zero panic there for me. And like I said, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be trades, and a roster spot's going to open up for him. He'll be back up, for the last month and a half of the season. I don't think it's a bad thing. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, a couple things for me. Good on the agent, because that's his job, and that's why Matthew Coronato's paying him money. So take that with a grain of salt, because you're always going to have your agent and your family in your corner. So good on him for doing his job. And then for me, the one big thing about this lineup is the role matters when it comes to these conversations. And what I mean by that is a fourth line role does not suit a Matthew Coronato game. That's not what he is. And so his underlying numbers are really good for the few games he played up on that top line, small sample size. But on that fourth line, he gets a bit lost at times. And just what you were talking about, he's getting beat by defensemen. He's getting pushed over by defense. And things that he needs to do consistently at the NHL level, he's just not getting done. And it's just not there. So for me, the role really matters for Matthew Coronato. Playing in all situations with the Wranglers, getting high minutes, being a go-to guy is a lot better for his development than sitting on a fourth line beside Ryan Lomberg and going out and having 10 minutes of energy line. It's just not his game. And so I think for Matthew Coronato, it is best for him to be in the American Hockey League. And you preach patience, I'm going to preach patience, because that's what you need from these guys. Nowhere ever has anyone ever been overcooked in the American Hockey League and been a crappy player because of it. Oh, no, he spent too much time in the AHL. That's why he's a bad player. Has never been a sentence uttered by a general manager or a coach in the history of hockey. It's just not a thing. And just like you said, he's going to be in this lineup going forward. There's no doubt about it. This guy has all the tools to be a 20 to 30 goal scorer in the National Hockey League if he can get the work in and develop himself. And sitting on a fourth line in Calgary or a 13th forward in Calgary isn't the type of role that's going to get that out of this player. That's why you have, listen up, Twitterites. That's why you have a Rooney. That's why you have a Kirkland. Those are the guys that you sit on your bench for 10 minutes or in the press box watching other guys play hockey. Those are the guys that take those roles on and provide you the energy. Remember, the role of a fourth line in the National Hockey League, and especially on the Flames here, is this is an energy line that tries to have a positive effect on the hockey game and allows, and this is very important, allows your top players to get some rest. So you're not always just going back to them over and over and over. Because look at Edmonton, they run out of gas with those top guys because that's all they throw out there. So fourth line roles are very important. So I'm not trying to diminish the fourth line role in the National Hockey League, but that's just not what Coronato is. And yes, he probably outplays Anthony Mantha, but that's where your contract is going to work against you. Your entry-level contract, you're the two-way guy, you're going to go down over the veteran more times than not in these situations. So if you're Matthew Coronato and your agent is tweeting out all this stuff, good. That means you're upset about being in the American Hockey League. Use that motivation to get yourself back. Be undeniable for the Flames come March, come next season. and be in this lineup and show what you are worth and work on getting that second contract. You have our RFA coming up here soon. Earn that second contract, earn that money, show the Flames, hey, I'm here and I'm ready and I'm able. It goes for Coronato, it goes for Pelche, it goes for anybody else. Hanzik, if he goes down to the AHL, that's what you need to use as your motivation to be undeniable for the Flames. And at the end of the day, for me, Matthew Coronato has not been undeniable for the Calgary Flames. While he's had a good season, yes, just not undeniable for me.
That's totally fair, and just look what Jacob Pelche has gone down there and done. He's lighting up the AHL right now. He's looking
motivated.
Undeniable down there. He's motivated. Look at what Connor Zary did at the beginning of last season. He went down there, lit it up, got another chance to come back up. The exact same thing is going to happen with Coronato here. And just to kind of finish off this topic,
yep,
Darren Haynes put out a great tweet about this whole topic, so I'm just going to read it verbatim.
I love Darren.
I think he does a fantastic job covering the team. So this is what he says. So he says, if you're worked up about Matt Coronato, who's 21 years old, 1 month into his second pro season, being assigned to the American Hockey League, meet Connor Zary. Zary played 140 AHL games and was in his third pro season when at the age of 22, he was recalled for good last October 31st. Coronato has played 42 AHL games. Breathe. And I just think that's such a good perspective on this whole thing. Zary was a first-round pick. Coronato was a first-round pick. Yep. I think they both have pretty similar skill sets. They kind of have similar size. So it's not like Matt Coronato is like a first overall pick and he has to be in the NHL. It's like, no, like he was picked like, what is it, 11th or 12th overall. Like, it's okay that he goes down to the American Hockey League in his second pro season. It's all right. It's worked out well for other Calgary Flames members. So that's
there's no time crunch on him either, right? There's absolutely zero time crunch for this player. You have him under contract. He's going to be an RFA when his contract's up, and there's time. There's time to work here. I love that from Darren Haynes. Absolutely.
I guess the only thing that, like in the argument that people are making for Coronato is, could you be souring the relationship? That is a genuine concern. So I think that's kind of fair criticism. And then also, I mean, like we talked about, he has outplayed a few guys on this roster. Like, he has definitely outplayed Mantha. He's outplayed, in my opinion, he's outplayed guys like Kirkland, Klapka. Like, he's definitely outplayed those guys, and he does deserve to probably be in the NHL. But like we've just gone over everything here, it's okay. It's okay to be patient. His time will come. It's not like he's 25 years old. This is 21.
I think that's where you have to have a good coach and a good general manager like the Flames, I believe the Flames have, where you're messaging for a guy like Coronato, much like the next guy we're going to talk about here. The messaging has to be correct. You have to be on the same page here and explain it to them and have a positive reinforcement behind your messaging that says, hey, we're not putting you here because we hate you or because you suck. We're putting you here for this reason, and we see and we value you for this reason. And let that guy take that message with them. And if the player's in the right mindset, they're going to take that, much like this next guy we're talking about here, took that, was motivated about it, used it, and propelled himself into a role. And you can say now, Dustin Wolf is the next guy we're going to talk about, has done exactly that. He had that messaging for 2 years of being the next guy. Hey, don't worry, you're going to get your chance. We're going to make room for you. Go play, be that guy, work on your craft, be perfect what you want to do here, be that guy and make it undeniable for us. And I think Dustin Wolf has shown that he is almost undeniable now with the numbers we've seen from him this season, with what we saw from him last year in the AHL and spot duty throughout the season. Dustin Wolf has really paid back to the Flames the faith that they showed in him, and it works both ways here. So let's talk about Dustin Wolf here, because I think there's a lot of similarities between how they've treated Coronato to what they've done with Dustin Wolf here. That's just my opinion. What have you made of Dustin Wolf and his ability now to come in here, be a full-time NHL goaltender for the Flames, and look really ridiculously good at doing it?
Well, I mean, yeah, you said it. He's looked fantastic. He's looked really, really good. But I'll kind of start this conversation by playing devil's advocate a little bit.
Yeah, do it.
So I know there's a lot of people out there that are saying, give Dustin Wolf the net, give him 2 out of every 3 starts kind of thing. When the season's over, he should probably have 50 to 55 starts. I don't know if I totally agree with that. And what I really like about what the Flames have done with Dustin Wolf this season is that I think they've done a great job sheltering him and managing his playing time. Because if you look at the starts Dan Vladar has made so far, they've been pretty ruthless.
Road Warrior.
Road Warrior for sure. So he starts the season in Vancouver in a hostile environment against a very good team that won the division last year. Then he goes to Edmonton, hostile environment against McDavid and Draisaitl. He gets ripped to shreds against the Carolina Hurricanes. He gets completely hung out to dry by his teammates in that one. I forget the other star at the top of my head, but he's going to start tonight in Vegas as well. The Flames historically have struggled a lot in Vegas. They're the number one scoring team in the NHL, and I find in that building probably the most in the NHL when the Golden Knights get kind of running downhill and they get the momentum. It's so hard to get it back. So I just think it's such a difficult building to play in. So they're basically screwing over Dan Vladar this year a little bit in terms of the starts they're giving him. Like those are some incredibly difficult situations that they're protecting Dustin Wolf from right now.
Yeah.
And I like that. I actually really like that a lot. Every single start Wolf has made has been at home. He's started against the Flyers, Blackhawks, and Penguins, 3 non-playoff teams from last year. He did have the Jets, and he fared very well. But I really like how they're protecting him because, in my opinion, at this young of an age, in his first full year in the NHL, there's no need to play him 55 games and put him out there in Vegas, put him out there in Edmonton and Vancouver at such an early, inexperienced part of his career at the Flames. So I'm actually kind of liking the goaltending, the splits that they're going through right now. So that's kind of where I stand on it. Do you think I'm out to lunch, or do you think they should start playing Wolf a lot more?
I think you're out to lunch on the fact that I didn't know this was going to be your take. I thought you were going to kind of side with Dustin Wolf a little bit more than you did there, but I love it. You put it down perfectly how I'm thinking of. I love this rotation. I love how they've worked it. I loved who they've given starts to in certain spots, because both these goaltenders are out here trying to prove something. Vladar's trying to prove that he is an NHL goaltender. He's worthy of a starter's role. That's where the harder matchups come in for him, playing against those harder teams. So he's trying to prove his goal, and he's getting the proper matchups to do so. I am a 1 or 1B at worst in this National Hockey League. Where Dustin Wolf, and the Flames are sheltering him a little bit, sure, but he's getting those starts, and he's showing that I am a National Hockey League goaltender, and I will beat what's put in front of me. I will take these situations. I hope a little bit down the line here they give Wolf a little bit more harder starts, start him on the road a little bit more in this rotation, let him prove himself even more for the Calgary Flames. But for right now, how they've done this rotation is exactly how I would have done it too if I was the coach in this situation. You have to know what you have in both of these guys for the benefit of your team down the line here, whether that's trading of a Vladar, or Vladar becoming your number one, or Dustin Wolf becoming your number one, or hey, both of these guys are going to be really good backups. We need to go find a number one. Whatever the situation is for the Flames down the road here, they need to figure it out, and this is how you do it. I think as the season goes along, you're going to have to eventually pick a guy to run with a little bit more and give them more starts down the line here. But for right now, why would you ruin what has worked for you as an organization this season in goal? Both goaltenders are rolling. Both goaltenders are confident despite recent results. Both goaltenders have really good numbers. You take away that first period in Vancouver, and Dan Vladar's numbers are absolutely ridiculous. And it's good. It's exactly what you want from Ryan Huska as well, because Huska can look at the end of the bench and go, I have the right guy in net at the right time. So good on Dustin Wolf for making himself undeniable in the American Hockey League, getting this opportunity, taking the next step. And it's really good for Dustin that he's proven at this level now that he is a National Hockey League goaltender. Let's not forget here, there is a guy directly behind both of these guys who I absolutely adore, who is chomping at the bit for one of these two to fail. Devin Cooley is 5-1 in the American Hockey League with just a .949 save percentage through his starts here. So he's no slouch as well. So both these guys have to continue to be on their game, because there's a guy waiting to take a job from either one of these guys. What a good problem to have for the Calgary Flames right now in goal. So don't ruin it for me. And if you want to see Wolf get more starts, I absolutely get it. But also you don't want to rush the guy at the same time. This is still a rebuild, and he still has a lot to learn in this league. it's going to be very fascinating how these guys work on the road with these 2 games coming up for the Flames this week on the road here. Because roads haven't really been a start for Dustin Wolf so far this year. He's going to get a road start coming up here against Utah in that awesome building. That's my guess anyways, because that's how they've been rolling these goaltenders. And we'll see if either guy can excel and take the reins down the road here. But right now, I love this rotation. It's exactly what the Flames need.
Yeah, another thing too that's kind of going on here is, in my opinion at least, is I think the Flames are actually increasing Dan Vladar's trade value by doing this, because now around the trade deadline, whether February or March, they can go to teams and they can say, look at the crappy starts we've been giving this guy and look at the numbers he's been putting up right now. Like,
I hope they word it that way too.
Hopefully. And like, they can say, like, look at the buildings that this guy is going into. Look at the team that's playing in front of him right now, and look at those freaking numbers. Like, like if you want a guy for the playoffs, if you want a guy, to be like your 1B for a playoff run, look no further than Dan Vladar, who's been great under pressure this year. And then that's great for the Calgary Flames if they can offload him, bring in a half decent asset for him. Then you bring up Devin Cooley, who, like you've just talked about, has been lights out in the American Hockey League. 949 save percentage, 1.63 goals against, a shutout, 5 wins. And the Wranglers posted a video the other day of some of like the saves he's been making, and some of them are just ridiculous. Like, he is lighting it up down there. So things are looking pretty good in goaltending circles for the Calgary Flames right now.
Absolutely is. We are coming up on the hour here, Robert. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to get into. Let me know. We'll chat about it. If not, tell what's coming up on Flames Nation from you and where these folks can find you and your latest.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered pretty much all the topics that we can in Flamesland here. I'm looking forward to seeing the next week of games here. They're playing against some really good teams, better teams than they have so far this year. So I'm excited to see how they handle themselves in places like Vegas and against a really good team like the Devils. So it's going to be an exciting week ahead here. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ring of Fire CGY, and then also at flamesnation.ca. I have an article out today just about kind of the first 4 games versus the second 4 games of the season, and a whole bunch of numbers, trying to figure out what happened. Who are the Calgary Flames? Are they the team in the first 4 games? Are they the team in the second 4 games? What's been the difference? So that's out on flamesnation.ca right now. So check that out.
I am looking forward to reading that one. I'm looking forward to the Markstrom tribute video later in the week, whether he gets booed or cheered. His reception, that'll be interesting.
There's no way he gets booed. You think he gets booed?
There's those fans out there. You always know they are. They still booed. They still boo Fox in New York, and it's been like 5 years, like 6 years. Get over it.
I love that though. I think that's awesome.
So we'll see.
Wait, I just want to say one thing. Maybe we can write this down for next week. Is we should have a Markstrom discussion about his time in Calgary. Sure. Because I think it's a fascinating one, and I know I probably have an unpopular opinion about him. So maybe we could dive into that next weekend.
We'll leave you all in suspense on that conversation. Enjoy the games in Vegas and Utah as well. Looking forward to seeing the Flames on the road here and seeing if Wolf and Vladar can continue their hard start. Find me on social media at VintageJohnny84 and all your social media platforms. Find the show at Red Mile Rundown across your social media platforms, even on Threads. Yes, we're there as well. And don't forget to like, subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher, and leave us that 5-star review. We will see you folks in 1 week's time. Enjoy the games and go Flames.